Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the latest news and current events from around the world. I'm your host, Walter, and we're glad you're joining us today. We're starting off with a developing story out of Ukraine, where a Russian missile attack has struck the crowded city center of Sumy, killing at least 31 people and injuring many more. The attack has been widely condemned, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calling for a global response to what he describes as a terrorist act. According to reports, the missile strike hit a busy area of the city, causing widespread damage and destruction. The Ukrainian Air Force has reported intercepting and destroying 43 Russian drones overnight, but it's clear that the conflict is ongoing and shows no signs of slowing down. We've seen reactions from world leaders, with U.S. President Donald Trump saying that talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine may be going okay, but there's a point at which you just have to either put up or shut up. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has also weighed in, saying that Trump seems to understand the root causes of the conflict and the need to address them in order to resolve it. It's a complex and multifaceted situation, with many different players and interests involved. As always, we'll strive to bring you a balanced and nuanced view of the story, without taking sides or promoting any particular agenda. The situation in Ukraine is just one of the many stories we'll be covering on today's show. We'll also be looking at other news from around the world, including developments in politics, business, and more. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're glad you're still with us as we dive into our middle segment. Today, we're discussing a couple of interesting stories that caught our attention. First off, let's talk about the UK steel industry. There's been some concern about the potential shutdown of steel plants due to high energy costs and competition from abroad. The British government has stepped in with a rescue package to keep these plants running, but it's unclear whether this will be enough to sustain the industry in the long term. On a related note, we're also following a story out of Canada, where Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is proposing new ethics legislation that would limit politicians' financial and lobbying-related conflicts of interest. This comes as Prime Minister Mark Carney faces scrutiny over his personal assets and potential ties to private companies. It's worth noting that Carney has placed his assets in a blind trust since taking office, but some critics argue that this doesn't go far enough to address concerns about transparency and accountability. Poilievre's proposal would require politicians to disclose their tax history and divest from certain assets, including those held in tax havens. As we consider these stories, it's clear that issues of ethics and transparency are relevant on both sides of the Atlantic. While the specifics may differ, the underlying concerns about accountability and fairness are universal. We'll continue to follow these developments and provide updates as more information becomes available. In the meantime, we'd love to hear your thoughts on these topics. Do you think politicians should be required to disclose more information about their personal finances? Should there be stricter rules around lobbying and conflicts of interest? Share your opinions with us on social media using the hashtag #ConcreteBlock, and we might feature them in a future episode. Stay tuned for our final story of the day, right here on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. I'm your host, Walter. We're wrapping up today's show with a look at a story that's been making waves in the world of politics and finance. You may have heard about Elon Musk's involvement in the U.S. government, and today we're going to dive into some controversy surrounding his role. According to a report from the New York Times, Musk's team has been claiming credit for saving millions of dollars by canceling certain government contracts. However, upon closer inspection, it appears that these claims may be exaggerated or even entirely inaccurate. The report highlights several examples of contracts that were canceled, but the savings claimed by Musk's team don't quite add up. In one case, a contract for a Texas shelter was canceled, but the reported savings of $285 million seemed to be based on unrealistic assumptions about the number of children that would be housed there. In reality, the shelter had been empty since March 2024, and the actual savings are likely to be a fraction of what was claimed. Another example cited in the report involves a request for proposal that was never actually a contract at all. Despite this, Musk's team claimed credit for saving over $318 million by canceling it. However, experts say that it's impossible to know what the government would have spent on the contract, as it was still in the bidding phase. It's worth noting that Musk's team has not responded to these allegations, and it's unclear whether they will revise their claims or provide more transparency about their methodology. On the other hand, some supporters of Musk argue that his efforts to cut waste and inefficiency in government are necessary and overdue. As we consider this story, it's essential to approach it with a critical eye and look at the facts as they are presented. While it's possible that Musk's team may have made genuine efforts to reduce government spending, it's also important to ensure that any claims of savings are accurate and based on realistic assumptions. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay informed.